You need to watch this if you're a good old person. The strength of refusing. If compassion guides your actions, then heed this wisdom. Acts of generosity often blossom into rewards, but those rewards don't always last a lifetime. Today's lesson delves into the empowering art of saying no. Remember, an overflowing well eventually runs dry. Don't allow your kindness to be taken for granted or become a crutch for others. By mastering the art of setting boundaries, you ensure your generosity remains a source of strength, not a path to exhaustion. In the dusty scrolls of the Western Han Dynasty, a tale unfolds. Duke Mu of Qin, a man of virtue, suffered a curious misfortune. His prized steed vanished, only to be discovered roasting on spits in the bellies of over 300 famished farmers at the foot of Mount Chishan. Fury ignited amongst the Duke's advisors, demanding the heads of these transgressors. But Duke Mu, a beacon of reason, scoffed at such brutality. To slay men over a beast, he boomed, justice demands no such barbarity. Besides, he added with a sly wink, common wisdom tells us horse meat clashes with a fine vintage. With a flourish, Duke Mu instructed his men to deliver a generous cask of wine to the remorseful farmers. Years later, the winds of war swept across the land, and Qin found itself locked in a bitter struggle with Jin. Duke Mu, amidst the chaos, found himself cornered, his life hanging by a thread. Just as all hope seemed lost, a band of fierce warriors emerged from the fray, defying the odds to save the Duke from the jaws of defeat. These unlikely saviors? None other than the very farmers from Chishan, their hearts brimming with gratitude for the Duke's past clemency. As the elders say, a seed of kindness, no matter how small, can blossom into a mighty harvest. While the belief in karma, where good deeds are rewarded, offers a comforting perspective, a concern arises regarding the potential pitfalls of excessive kindness in the workplace and life in general. Individuals who prioritize agreeableness to a fault, consistently accommodating others' requests regardless of personal cost, may find themselves disadvantaged in the long run. The professional landscape, much like life itself, can harbor individuals adept at exploiting the generosity of others. A recent conversation with a colleague highlighted this very concern. They recounted a frustrating experience with a coworker who repeatedly solicited loans with no intention of repayment. Despite the clear lack of integrity displayed by the colleague, my friend also acknowledged their own role in perpetuating the situation. The question posed was, why continue to lend to someone with a demonstrated pattern of such behavior? This sentiment reflects a common challenge: the difficulty in setting boundaries, particularly in close working relationships. These individuals embody the archetype of the overly accommodating professional, unable to assert their needs for fear of jeopardizing collegiality. This, however, presents a harsh reality. The professional world can harbor those who will exploit kindness without hesitation. The more readily one offers assistance, the more susceptible they become to manipulation and being taken advantage of. The crux of the issue lies in the potential misinterpretation of unwavering kindness. While a commendable trait, it can be misconstrued as weakness, leading to increasingly unreasonable demands from the recipient. This dynamic fosters resentment in the giver and a sense of entitlement in the taker. The key to navigating this challenge lies in cultivating a balanced approach, maintaining one's core kindness is essential, but so too is the ability to establish boundaries and assert a well-timed no when necessary. This doesn't negate the value of kindness. Rather, it refines it, ensuring that generosity remains a source of empowerment for both oneself and others. Furthermore, effective professional interactions require discernment. It's crucial to identify those who genuinely appreciate your kindness and separate them from those who see it as an exploitable weakness. True professional kindness isn't about self-sacrifice or becoming a pushover. It's about fostering genuine connections and using your generosity to empower both yourself and your colleagues. By striking a balance and prioritizing healthy boundaries, you can ensure that your kindness remains a source of strength, not a detriment in your professional life. Beatrice had always prided herself on being a good neighbor. When Mrs. Ramirez down the street, a kind but forgetful woman in her late 70s, misplaced her keys for the umpteenth time, Beatrice never hesitated to spare a key and a cup of tea. One particularly snowy afternoon, Mrs. Ramirez sheepishly confessed she'd accidentally locked herself out again. Beatrice, despite battling a nasty head cold herself, bundled up and rushed over. This time, however, upon opening the door, Mrs. Ramirez announced, beaming, "Beatrice, darling, perfect timing. I just want to cruise to the Bahamas and need help packing. Could you lend me a hand?" Beatrice, despite her throbbing head and yearning for a nap, felt a pang of guilt. How could she refuse the sweet, elderly woman? So she spent the afternoon lugging suitcases and sorting clothes, her cold worsening with every sneeze. A week later, Beatrice's car sputtered to a halt, needing a costly repair. In a moment of desperation, she sheepishly approached Mrs. Ramirez, explaining her predicament. To her shock, Mrs. Ramirez, instead of offering help, became defensive. "Beatrice, dear," she huffed, "just because I borrowed a cup of sugar last week, must you pester me for money? You young folks have no patience." Beatrice stood there, stunned. The woman she'd helped countless times now saw her as a nuisance. Later, lamenting to a friend, Beatrice sighed, "I feel awful, like I burdened her somehow. That's the trouble with good people. They always take the blame." Her friend, Margaret, a retired social worker with a head full of silver curls, patted Beatrice's hand. "It's not that simple, Beatrice. Kindness is a beautiful thing, but it needs boundaries." Mrs. Ramirez, bless her heart, has become accustomed to your generosity, mistaking it for an endless well. You're not a bad person, Beatrice, for needing help yourself sometimes. Margaret continued, "Think of Harold next door. Remember how he used to call you over every other day to fix his leaky faucet? You, a talented artist, spending hours wrestling with his rusty pipes. Finally, you had to politely explain you weren't a plumber and suggested a professional. Harold grumbled a bit, but eventually understood. He even called to thank you for the referral to a great plumber." Beatrice nodded slowly. "Maybe you're right, Margaret. Maybe setting boundaries isn't selfish, but a way to protect the wellspring of my own kindness." A small smile touched her lips. "Perhaps I should bake Mrs. Ramirez a pie and have a gentle conversation about boundaries, wrapped in a warm slice of blueberry goodness." Margaret chuckled. "Now that's the Beatrice I know, using her kindness in a way that empowers both you and your neighbor. An old adage warns, let bygones be bygones, but remember past mistakes. Selective amnesia breeds festering resentment. There's nothing wrong with offering a helping hand, but don't become a doormat. Occasional acts of kindness are commendable, but abruptly stopping that flow can spark unexpected bitterness. The most tragic good person isn't simply outdated. They still manage to cause offense. Don't go overboard with the Good Samaritan routine. Just fulfill your fair share. Otherwise, you'll be a target for exploitation. There's a worn-out saying for the chronically good person: suffering builds character, which is a complete fallacy. Suffering is simply suffering. Those who lack the ability to say no become victims of manipulation and bullying, ultimately drowning in a sea of bitter complaints. Mastering the art of refusal is a critical life skill for adults. Research indicates that a polite but firm no can eliminate over 90% of unnecessary burdens, freeing up a significant amount of personal time and energy. The truth is that setting boundaries is a surprisingly rare talent. The burden of conformity can be heavy, pressuring us to endure tedious dinners, force down unwanted drinks, and utter compliments that ring false. Disagreeing with someone doesn't have to ignite a battle. If a social circle feels like a pair of ill-fitting shoes, there's no reason to squeeze your toes in hopes they'll conform. Understanding what truly ignites your passions allows you to prioritize your time and avoid interactions that leave you feeling emotionally depleted. Consider the paradox of a celebrated interviewer who boasts a Rolodex of guests from all walks of life. Despite his seemingly expansive social network cultivated through his work, his inner circle is remarkably small. He finds contentment in solitude, happily spending weeks at home without feeling a need for constant external stimulation. For him, friendship transcends mere acquaintanceship. It requires a certain harmonious blend of intangible qualities, a shared passion, a sense of compatibility, and a foundation of mutual respect. Without these elements, even the most animated conversations feel like exchanges between strangers passing on a crowded sidewalk. We all grapple with the art of refusal, struggling to decline unwanted invitations, incompatible connections, and unappealing events. These simply aren't our people. Incessant attempts to appease them or force compatibility ring hollow, offering little in the way of genuine connection or personal growth. As the saying goes, I've eschewed fabricated friendships for the solace of cherished solitude. Embracing a solitary life feels most authentically me. One writer chronicled the woes of frequent, unexpected visitors who plagued him across 5 different residences. His inability to utter a simple no at the door transformed his life into a constant state of disruption. These guests, with their requests for favors, banner writing, invitations, or simply a way to fill their empty hours, hindered his work with their intrusions. Life is teeming with individuals who readily exploit a kind heart. Mastering the art of refusal safeguards you from unnecessary burdens and emotional distress. Expressing your values and boundaries discourages others from taking advantage of your good nature. It empowers you to curate your social life, surrounding yourself with those who enrich your experience rather than detract from it. By prioritizing quality over quantity in your interactions, you create space for genuine connections that nourish your soul. A cynical observer once quipped, "Why the dwindling respect? Because approachability curdles into weakness when yes spills from your lips and your generosity knows no bounds." The world overflows with characters who contribute little to your tapestry. When they treat you as a bottomless well, to be tapped at will, it's a blatant disrespect. Indulging their endless demands fosters an environment ripe for exploitation, leaving you utterly depleted. Perhaps the root of the issue lies in the discomfort some face with rejection. Accustomed to excessive kindness, they fear a no will not only fracture relationships, but also tarnish their self-image. By all means, offer unwavering support when aid falls within your capacity. However, exceeding your limitations ultimately leads to self-inflicted exhaustion and resentment. As we mature, mastering the art of refusal becomes an essential life skill. We must learn to distinguish between genuine requests and those that burden us with obligations that rightfully belong elsewhere. The fear of rejection often paralyzes us, leaving us unsure of how to decline gracefully. Remember the proverb, valid reasons empower refusal. Those making requests anticipate both acceptance and rejection. Your response is rarely a surprise. Refusal carries consequences, but they needn't be dire. It may necessitate setting boundaries within friendships, requiring open communication and a willingness to walk away from incompatible connections. It might elicit criticism, but that's often a reflection of the other person's self-centeredness rather than a flaw in your character. Yet when you possess a clear understanding of your desires, what truly merits your attention, and the importance of directing your generosity towards deserving recipients, you gain the power to make decisive choices. It's about prioritizing quality over quantity, fostering genuine connections that uplift rather than drain your spirit. By strategically employing refusal, you create space for the relationships that nourish your soul and empower you to live a life true to yourself. Imagine your life as a vibrant tapestry. Each thread represents a connection, an experience, and a bit of your time and energy. When you indiscriminately allow others to dictate the colors and patterns, your masterpiece loses its definition and richness. Mastering refusal empowers you to curate your tapestry, ensuring the threads that are woven in contribute to the beauty and strength of the whole. As you navigate the days ahead, let compassion be your guide. However, remember that true kindness thrives alongside healthy boundaries and unwavering principles. Unfettered generosity, devoid of these anchors, risks morphing into weakness, even foolishness. This concludes today's message. We at Better Journey Channel are grateful for your presence. If our words resonate with you, please consider subscribing and sharing them with others. Remember, on this journey of self-discovery, you are never truly alone.